Welcome back, class. We're going to spend a few minutes with the third component or the third section of chapter 4. We're going to talk a little about value chains. And a value chain, again, it's a tool. It's a tool that charts the path by which products and services are created and eventually sold to customers. As each step is completed, the product becomes more valuable. That makes sense. Go back to Krispy Kreme. At some point along the way, flour, confectioner sugar, yeast, whatever else goes in. They've got some with, chocolate chocolate toppings. They've got some sprinkles. All of that comes into the store, and through the production process, they turn them into donuts. So at each step of the way, so if you've ever seen that, conveyor belt that they always show, and they put the raw ingredients together, they, punch the holes in the dough, they put them on that conveyor belt, and each step of the way, the conveyor belt drops in the grease, it cooks them, comes out on that conveyor belt, and they, pour all the glaze on them. And so that, each step of the way, that product becomes more and more valuable. And when they talk about elements of the value chain, there's the first thing they talk about are the primary activities. And a primary activity is an action directly involved in the creation and distribution of goods and services. Inbound logistics, arrival of the raw materials. Makes sense? Operations, the production process of a good or service. Again, go back to your micro class. That's the technology when they're talking about factors of production, the operations, the black box, the secret pieces, the mystique of it that takes raw materials and turns them into output or the finished products, the finished goods and services. What is that product? Go back to the we talked about, I guess, the four P's. Product. What it generates a product. Marketing and sales, activities used to attract potential customers and convince them to make purchases. Makes sense? Outbound logistics, the departure of finished goods. Go back to the marketing and sales. So there was in Southern California, and they branched out to some extent, you had See's Candy. Malls, shops in malls, kiosks, shops in airports. At least in the Southern California stores, if you came in to the store and then you bought some candy, you could buy it either pre-boxed or you could pick out what you wanted. They always gave out free samples. I always thought it was candy that, was getting old. They didn't want to get, they were trying to get rid of it, but it didn't matter because to people in the store, it was free piece of candy. And that drew a huge amount of walk-in business. People would come in to buy candy just to get that free piece of candy. When Krispy Kreme started their operations in Southern California, one of the big draws was if you went into Krispy Kreme, you automatically got, as long as that donut conveyor belt was running and they were making fresh donuts, you automatically got a free one. And kids loved it. Parents would bring kids in, and it was a huge draw and a huge marketing and sales. And Krispy Kreme, like See's Candy, they had outbound logistics, and they had that down to a science, because not only did See's Candy and Krispy Kreme has a lot of sales to schools and organizations where they're trying to raise funds for some special project. Same thing with See's Candy. When my son was in grade school, one of their activities, they were trying to raise money to go on a trip to DC, but one of the activities were they were selling coupons for See's Candy, and it was a great deal. It was like $7 a pound. And I think now See's Candy is like $33 a pound or something, some ridiculous price. But they did a lot of outbound logistics to help sell their goods and services. And lastly, service. to the extent to which a company provides assistance to its customers. Think about service. Southwest, Costco, Nordstrom, great when it comes to servicing the clientele. And then you've got, I call them, secondary activities, but the text calls them support activities. It's an action not directly involved in the evolution of a product, but that is instead provides important underlying support for a primary activity. Makes sense? Those can be company infrastructure, how the company's organized, how it's led by its executives. What is that reporting relationship? How many's in that C-suite or that senior management team, and then how many directors and how many managers and supervisors you have. Is it top heavy or is it bottom heavy? You've got HR department, human resource management, includes activities involved in recruiting, training, and compensating employees. HR is have a huge investment in most companies in maximizing human capital, improving the human capital of the employees. Technological development, use of computerizations, automation, telecommunications to support the primary activities. And then lastly, procurement. It's the process for negotiating and purchasing raw materials. So all of these support activities, all of these secondary activities, you're going to find them. I can't think of many companies that you wouldn't find some level of these support activities involved in the not only production of goods and services, but the distribution of goods and services. And then the authors move into, value chain to best value supply chain. And they talk about time is money. And that's where you get into a supply chain, a system of people, activities, information, and resources involved in creating a product and moving it to the customers. Think of all of the issues that we had during COVID with supply chain issues. I mean, not only did companies not have the inventory that they probably should have had, but even if they had the inventory, they couldn't get it logistically moved from point A to point B. And you walked into stores, Costco, BJ's, Sam's Club, Walmart. It didn't matter what I call them grocery store that you went in. There were a lot of shelves empty. They just could not keep the product replenished. And when it comes to best value supply chains, there are 4 components. Supply chains that focus on the total value added to the customer as opposed to individual outcomes, such as speed or cost. So rather than focusing on speed or cost, they have decided, again, they have developed this process or this strategy, and they call it best value supply chains, and it's got 4 components. Number 1, it's the strategic supply chain management. The use of supply chains as a means to create competitive advantages and embrace company performance. Again, talking about competitive advantage. If you've got that strategic supply chain in place and can manage it appropriately, even though I think the wheels pretty much fell off of everybody's strategic supply chain during COVID. But if you've got that strategic supply chain in place and can manage it, it may not ensure long run success, but it's going to definitely help you drive long run success. And a lot of this supply chain, when you're talking about measures, it's speed or cycle time, the time duration from initiation to completion of the production and distribution process. Again, Krispy Kreme, See's Candy, Starbucks. Think about the speed and the cycle time when you walk into Starbucks. You walk in, you give the cashier your order. If you're getting a breakfast sandwich or a muffin or something, it kind of goes on this side. If you're getting some kind of drink, maybe you're doing tea or hot chocolate or some kind of woo-woo coffee drink, it goes to the other side. And the speed and the cycle time and the process that they have down. I don't drink coffee, but they've got a pretty slick operation. Quality, it's the relative liability of supply chain activities. How do they manage those quality aspects of the supply chain? The cost, price paid for supply chain inputs. When you've got individuals, if they are astute contract negotiators, then they're the ones that are going to be driving this cost. You've also got, the influences on cost and especially just the measures together. You've got things like natural disasters, you've got strikes, you've got changing in the environment that can affect any of this. And then lastly, on the measure, you're talking about flexibility, a supply chain's responsiveness to changes in customers' needs. Think about healthcare during COVID. What happened? Most states, I know New York State did, they put a moratorium on elective surgeries. If you were having elective surgeries, it wasn't going to happen. They didn't have the hospital beds. They didn't have the resources in the hospitals. Doctors' offices were closing because nobody wanted, some states you weren't even supposed to be out traveling. And so they switched to telemedicine, teledoc, telehealth. And so healthcare did a pretty good job with flexibility when it came to that significant hit to the healthcare environment. The second piece of this concept, the best value supply chain, is agility. The supply chain's relative capacity to act rapidly in response to dramatic changes in supply and demand. Again, the wheels completely fell off during COVID. Think of what happens to agility when hurricanes hit Florida, the Gulf Coast. Think about, California when you have earthquakes. Think about, I'll call it Tornado Alley, but you're talking about, Oklahoma, Kansas, through the Midwest when, tornadoes are coming through. You've got the, can't remember, it was what, two winters ago? You had Snowmageddon in the state of Texas where they, temperatures, plummeted to levels they'd probably never seen or at least hadn't seen in a long time. They had all the snow and the cold weather, and it put such a strain on the electric grid. So, agility drives all of this. And when it comes to agility, one of the things that you can do to improve your agility, if you're a company or organization, is you can use buffers. You can have excess capacity sitting there. You can have inventory, maybe more inventory than normal. That's what happened during COVID. The inventories just were depleted in such, fast, so quickly that there was nothing left to sell. And then, MIS, Management Information Systems, if you've got money invested in those, they can help you kind of with this agility concept or this agility piece of it. Rapid improvements and reduced cost of MIS has increased the ability to service and respond to customers. Agility seeks to optimize the total cost of all buffers. And one of the things that a lot of companies do is they try co-locating, maybe not with customers, but as close to customers as they can. And I think it's Walmart that has distribution sites scattered around the countries that are within a day's drive to their customer base. So again, when it comes to inventory and in satisfying customers, Walmart does a pretty good job. And one of their buffers is they try to maybe not collate in the same city with the Walmart stores, but they want to have them within a day's drive of each other. The third thing is adaptability, a willingness and capacity to reshape supply chains when necessary. Supply chain configuration strives to maximize customer satisfaction and minimize cost. That's what customers want. Reasonable cost. They want customer service when they need it. Companies are trying to maximize customer satisfaction because they want to maintain those customers. They want to build brand loyalty. Both the customer and the company are trying to minimize costs so that customers, they want their disposable income to go as far as possible. And in the environment we're living in now, inflation is just killing our real wage rate. The real wage rate is your nominal wage rate divided by the price level. And over the last couple of years, the price level has been just completely out of control. So the real wage rate, and not only that, the wealth that all of us have has been significantly eroded. So that's where we're talking about adaptability. How can companies adapt to their customers? How can the companies try to ensure that they're giving customers exactly what they want? And then fourth, or the last one, is alignment, creating consistencies in the interest of all participants in a supply chain. And what that means is you must align parameters among all supply chain members. You want things like incentivized contracts. You want a collaborative, forecasting between companies and their customers. You want rapid information transfers, and especially the incentivized contracts. You want those contracts incentivized. If you're a company and you're the one negotiating contracts, you want to make sure you have language or parameters built in those contracts that there's going to be a financial penalty if your suppliers don't perform up to those contracts. And again, working with, if you're a company working with both suppliers and buyers, you want to make sure that you're collaborating together to forecast what the demand for a particular either input's going to be or the particular output's going to be. And then rapid information transfers, you need to be sharing information. Most successful companies are willing to share some level of information with their suppliers and buyers. And then they go through a few, kind of to wind up this chapter, they go through what they call beyond resource-based theory. Most popular resource-based theory is by far the most popular theory as to why companies either succeed or fail. And then they threw out, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 alternatives. One was enactment, a theoretical perspective that contends that an organization can, at least in part, create an environment for itself that is beneficial to the organization by putting strategies in place that reshape competitive conditions in a favorable way. Sounds like a lot of BS, doesn't it? And basically, they treat executives as the masters of their domain. And a lot of executives are to some extent masters of their domain. Now, how well they do in creating the environment in such a way that it is advantageous to the company and creates that competitive advantage, I don't know. I think it's going to vary from one company to the next. I've worked for 4 or 5 major health plans, and it's all over the board as far as how good the C-suite or the senior executives are when it comes to managing and forecasting, especially when it comes to impacting the environment we're trying to work within. Also, that the C-suite executives, you want them to develop strategies that reshape competitive conditions in a favorable way. The degree of fragmentation in a market will impact this capability, and that's an important aspect, because think of the restaurant market, think of the restaurant industry. It is extremely fragmented. If you think about the cell phone industry, it's not so much fragmented. It's probably not an oligopoly, but it's probably getting close to an oligopoly. But it's, if you have a non-fragmented industry or non-fragmented market, it makes it easier for your senior management team to make changes or to try to manipulate the environment in such a way that it becomes important to the company. The second one is environmental determinism. a theoretical perspective that contends that organizations are limited in their ability to adapt to conditions around them. Just the polar opposite to the first one we just talked about. And the example they give in the book is government regulation until 1978 on airlines. As soon as government regulation, was I don't want to say mitigated. As soon as that regulation went away, airlines really struggled because with the government regulations, how many passengers, how many routes you could have, how many, what's the price you could charge. Once all that regulation went away, then you had a bunch of airlines struggling, trying to figure out how they could impact the environment around them. Southwest did a pretty good job. Some of the others, not so much. And then they talk about, they talk about the environmental determinism. They compared it to dinosaurs and many animals, because environmental changes, animals and dinosaurs couldn't react to them. See what else is there. Changes in business environment can destroy a company, and it destroyed a lot of the airline industry, a lot of the companies in the airline industry. Once the government regulation went away in 1978, it went more to a capitalist-based market economy. Then you have institutional theory, the extent to which companies copy one another's strategies. Fast food happens all the time. Dollar menus, meal deals, new chicken sandwiches, new burger products, new ways to fix tacos. Institutional theory is rampant, especially in fast food. They talk about frequent flyer programs. I guess American Airlines may have come out with the first one, but all of these airlines now have frequent flyer programs. They did a couple of quotes in the text talking about imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. Yeah, you've heard that. Monkey see, monkey do. I kind of like that because I feel like some airlines are, act like monkeys are managing them, because it is kind of monkey see, monkey do. And then lastly, you've got transaction cost economies. Oliver Williamson won the 2009 Nobel Prize for his concept of transaction cost economies, a theory that centers on whether it is cheaper for a company to make or to buy the product it needs. Cost benefit analysis is basically what they're talking about. Backward integration strategy, a company that enters the business of one of its suppliers. And that happens some, maybe not. And I think they use the airline company, airline business or airline industry as an example of this, because they buy or they lease their planes because it's more cost effective for them to do that. And then lastly, the chapter winds up with SWOT analysis. And it seems like SWOT analysis has been around forever. It's a technique for understanding a company's situation by considering its strengths and weaknesses, along with opportunities and threats that exist in the company's environment. Again, SWOT, strength, weakness, opportunity, threat. Compare internal and external factors to generate ideas to drive success. And when you go through the SWOT, again, the little snappy acronym, SWOT, you want to leverage a company's strengths. Weakness, you want to stay away from a company's weaknesses or try to resolve them if you can't eliminate them. Opportunities, you want to capitalize on opportunities. And threats, you either want to protect yourself against threats or figure out a way to turn a threat into an opportunity. And they talk just a couple of minutes about SWOT caution or cautions of using SWOT analysis. Again, it seems like it's been around forever. And if you've already been out in the workplace, depending on what your level of interaction is, you may have been brought into some of these SWOT analysis teams. They'll talk about, we're going to develop a SWOT team, and that SWOT team is going to tell us how we're going to price our next goods and services for 2025. So you'll see these companies start rolling out these SWOT teams in late summer, early fall, to try to figure out, what they're going to do in fiscal year 2025. Don't confuse the internal with the external factors when you're doing SWOT analysis. Don't confuse opportunities with the strategies designed to capitalize on those opportunities. Don't overemphasize the results. That's probably the best piece of information that they have in that section about the cautions on SWOT analysis. I've worked for companies before that, I mean, you go through a SWOT analysis and you generate some results, and it's like it's etched in stone. And those are the kind of companies that have problems, or the kind of or a functional area within a company, the kind of issues that you'll have. And it's best reviewed as a brainstorming exercise. And I wholeheartedly agree there. During your SWOT analysis, you're throwing a lot of different ideas on the wall to see if they stick. Kind of like, some people say that's how you tell if when you're cooking spaghetti, if it's done, throw it up against the wall, that wall test. And that's what you have in the brainstorming, and then especially in the SWOT analysis. You're throwing out ideas, and some of them stick and some of them don't. And to me, that is the biggest advantage of SWOT analysis. And that's going to pretty much wrap it up for chapter 4. The next time we get together, we're going to talk about chapter 5. Thank you.